Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the starter set for the Demon Hunter in Season 24 of Diablo 3, Natalya's Vengeance. So let's get right to it. 2-piece bonus, reduce the cooldown of Rain of Vengeance by 4 seconds when you hit with a hatred-generating attack or hatred-spending attack. 4-piece bonus, Rain of Vengeance deals 100% increased damage. 6-piece bonus, after casting Rain of Vengeance, deal 14,000% increased damage and take 60% less damage. To help with the set, we are going to be using a gold set. 2-piece, reduce damage taken by 15%, increased damage dealt by 30%. 3-piece, 30% damage from elite monsters' attacks. Well, that's minus 30%, and plus 30 damage to elite monsters. Alright. We're also going to be using on this build a couple of other things. Obviously, Natalya's got a weapon, so we'll be using the weapon with this set. Also, we're going to be using Hellcat Waist Guards. Grenades have a chance to bounce 5 times, dealing an additional 50% on each bounce. The bonus is increased by 800%. Now, this build is pretty much a Rain of Vengeance grenade type of build. There's only not really that many good skills you can run. We're going to be running Focus and Restraint on here. We're going to be using Squirt's Necklace. That way we can get a slight bit more power while we're standing still, because we do stand still quite a bit with this set. Alright, so we're going to be using Entangling Shot, Rain of Vengeance, and FEMA, which is basically the only thing that really does a whole bunch of damage in here. Smokescreen, Special Recipe, Fan of Knives, Pinpoint Accuracy. That way we can just get cooldown and damage increase. Vengeance, Dark Heart. That way we can, kind of reduce the damage we take. Strafe, Drifting Shadow, because it is a hatred-generating thing, so it will actually help us with the 4- and 6-piece bonus. For the passives, Grenadier, Call of the Weak. We will also be using an Ambush, because that's kind of helpful here, and Awareness, because we will take a lot of fatal damage. For the Knights Cube, Odyssey's End, Crashing Rain, Ring of Royal Grandeur, you could use the green fan weapon in place of Odyssey's End. I prefer Odyssey's End because the fan of green thorn, I believe it's called, isn't too helpful, in my personal opinion. This is what my Paragon looks like. For the Follower, honestly, the only things you really need on it to be very effective is the Flavor of Time, the Nemesis Bracers. You can also add a gold skin. That's a kind of decent thing to have as well. The shoulders, the gloves don't matter too much. The helm, if you want more gems, you can put a Broken Crown in. I was using Sage Set because before this I was using Nephilim Rift Grinding. So that's why it was actually on this follower. Alright, this is not a great armor for Season 24. I gotta be honest, this is probably one of the weakest armors you could possibly have for a starter set. There's not a lot of options for it. It doesn't do a lot of damage. You have to play a certain way with it, which I'll be showing in these Greater Rift demonstrations here. So don't expect a whole bunch out of it. We're only going to do a Greater Rift 60, 65, and 70, because right at 70, it starts to already kind of struggle quite a bit. Alright, so when you get into the Greater Rift, first thing you want to do is basically fire off your Rain of Vengeance. Then what you want to do is strafe around. If you strafe around, you'll see that it increases the amount of cooldown reduction that you have significantly. Now, in order to get back our primary resources that we are spending, thanks to the fact that Strafe cost a lot of hatred, we are going to be using the Entangling Shot to basically get back whatever resources we've lost and need to regenerate that way. Obviously, when we're using Vengeance and we're standing still and we're firing off Entangling Shots, case in point here, as you see, you will build back also your Vengeance that way. Honestly, or your hatred, I should say. Honestly, when it comes to this particular armor, I would say you have to kind of use a strategy that I've always told you about, which is when you fire off your Rain of Vengeance, you're going to have to stand behind it and let the enemies come to you and just kind of walk into that cone. You can fire it here, case in point, but you leave yourself very susceptible. So basically, your damage rotations kind of should look like this. You're going to fire off a Rain of Vengeance. Right after the Rain of Vengeance, you should fire off a couple of strafes to build back your cooldown. From there, it's either the option of firing off another Rain of Vengeance, or you fire off Entangling Shots. Entangling Shots are basically how you're bringing back your primary resources. When you fire off a Rain of Vengeance, if it doesn't go into the enemies like this, and it has a tendency sometimes to hit from farther away or miss its target, which is quite annoying, case in point here. Sometimes it'll hit, sometimes it won't. It's just kind of really mysterious as to how it's targeting and tracking targeting. I think it's something that maybe the dev should work on, but hey, I'm not necessarily a dev, maybe that's intended. But in situations like this where you fire it off and it doesn't particularly hit anything, you have to try to lead the enemies into it. Now, keep in mind, I've mentioned this many times on my channel before, when it comes to Diablo 3, the enemies, the mobs, are programmed in a way that whenever they see you, they will start to give chase to you. You could use this to your benefit to fire off Rain of Vengeance here, and have them just kind of chase you towards it so that they get hit by it. It's not the most effective strategy, but it is kind of the only viable strategy to kind of make the most use out of a range of vengeance that potentially misses. And it will miss quite a bit. When it comes to Rift Guard, it's the same strategy as before. You fire off the Rain of Vengeance. On Greater Rift 60 Torment 13, it'll pretty much one-shot. It should one-shot in Greater Rift 65 Torment 14. Once you get to Torment 15, things get really messy because it just doesn't do as much damage as armors. For Legendary Gems, really there's only one way you can go with this. I would recommend Bane of the Trap, Bane of the Stricken, and then you can kind of play right around with it. If you can stay far enough away from them, the mobs in particular, you can use Zay's Stone of Vengeance because it will increase the damage when you're attacking from far away. However, if you cannot do that, and you just want to get your Rain of Vengeance on super fast cooldown, alternatively, the way to go would be Goak of Swiftness in this case. You could also use a Stoic Alteration. I don't really feel that works that well for this particular build. As you saw there, that was a Greater Rift 60, Torment 13 difficulty, 2 minutes and 30-second clear time. So, let's talk a little bit about optimization. What optimization would you really do for an armor like this? Well, first, for starters, my recommendation would be, since we are not using Captain Crimson, but cooldown for Rain of Vengeance is going to be important since that's where your major source of damage is coming from, I would recommend putting cooldown reduction wherever you can get it available, where you're not sacrificing from other stats. Cooldown reduction 8.0%, obviously try to go for the maximum roll. Subsequently, then I would also recommend getting your crit hit chance up. So on your helm, I would recommend crit hit chance 6.0%. On your gloves, I recommend these free stats because they will just give you overall increased amount of damage because their critical hits basically just means you have a chance to do more damage, the most optimal amount of damage, you could say. So my recommendation would be on the gloves, crit hit damage 50%, crit hit chance at least 6.0%. I would also recommend a attack speed of at least 6.0%, preferably either between 7 and 8. 8 being the highest would be your best bet. Reason for that is you want to be able to attack a little bit quicker when you're just attacking things with your entangling shot with Rain of Vengeance, or for that matter, when you're attacking maybe with your strafe in particular. You just want to buff things up that way. Okay, subsequently, what else would you kind of want to buff in this armor? Well, you could in theory buff the grenades, because when you fire off the grenade with Rain of Vengeance, that does count as grenade damage. Case in point with the Hellcat's Waist Guard. So if you wanted to, you could put 15% grenade damage wherever possible just to get increased amount of damage. Considering the 6-piece bonus is not really anything that is major or significant or does a lot of damage in general, maybe buffing that is the way to go. If you don't want to buff the Rain of Vengeance, or you can't buff necessarily grenades or Rain of Vengeance because you can't just find the stat, try to buff the Entangling Shot, because you will rely a little bit more on the Entangling Shot as you go higher up in the Greater Rift. Now, in terms of Fervor Optimization, usually what you will want to do is, for an armor, you will want to level up a whole bunch of gems and then augment the armors that are pieces that are basically anything in your armor, or your weapons, or your necklace, or your rings for that matter, that's ancient legendary, and augment the gems at least at level 80. Sometimes it's really better to do it higher up, level 100. I'm just gonna give it to you straight, guys. Natalya's Vengeance is pretty much on par with basically Trag'Oul's avatar. That being that this is an F-tier armor, being that this is an armor that will significantly underperform compared to other types of armors. It's very weak, it doesn't deal a lot of damage, its skills are not exactly anything that are amazing or anything to scoff at. It's the bottom of the barrel. With that being said, I just gotta be honest with you. This will get you to a Greater Rift 60 and Torment 13, and you should be able to do some of your seasonal challenges. However, as you go further in, once you get to Greater Rift 70, we're talking Torment 15. I'm going to show you this right after this Greater Rift. The armor just can't perform. it gets to a point where, in my honest opinion, it's not worth augmenting this armor fully to extend the type of optimization for it. There's just so many better options for the Demon Hunter. For example, Gears of Dreadland, which we will be revisiting in Season 24. I believe that will be the videos starting next week, where I'm just going to cover all the S-tier non-starter build armors that you can play for Season 24 of Diablo III. Gears of Dreadlands is the way to go with the Demon Hunter still for Season 24. Yeah, Hungering Arrow got nerfed. It's not that major of a nerf. It only, like, hits you maybe about 10 Greater Rifts, where you might not be able to do a Greater Rift 150 solo, because you might not be that highly skilled, and you might have to rely on 4 players. It's still high. It's going to have high leaderboard placement. The nerfs did not hit the armor as bad in Season 23 as everybody was predicting. It still outperformed in leaderboard placements and did extremely well. If you want to completely own and devastate as a Demon Hunter, I cannot recommend enough playing Gears of Dreadland. Now, if you can't wait for my next video to drop, and keep in mind, Gears of Dreadland is going to be dropping probably next Wednesday for this channel, so you know. I always like to give these guys a little bit of heads up as to what we're doing. But if you can't wait, my Season 23 guide of Gears of Dreadland, Hungering Arrow, is available in the playlist. Same information from that video is going to be applicable for the Gears of Dreadland revisit video. I just like to revisit the armors every season because sometimes it's important to update the information. Certain things change, like different types of optimization come about. Sometimes I push the armors even further, where I can show you a little higher up in the grid of what you're kind of in for, what you can expect. But Gears of Dreadlands would be the best way to go if you're trying to go S tier and you're trying to get high leaderboard placement. If you don't want to go that way, the Unhallowed Essence, which is the multi-shot build for the Demon Hunter, in my personal opinion, is just as good and should be in the S tier list when it comes to Demon Hunter. That is a very good Demon Hunter armor to use in place of Natalya's Vengeance as well. You know, as you're playing through Season 24, you're going to kind of have to make decisions as to which type of armor you're going to want to invest in. I don't recommend Natalya's. If you're new to Diablo Seasonal Journeys, because I know this game goes on sale quite a bit on the Nintendo Switch, and I think it's gone on sale on Blizzard's particular app and store quite a bit sometimes too. If you're new to the Diablo seasons and how it works, basically you make a new character that's not tied to your non-seasonal characters. It doesn't share Paragon or anything. And you basically start from the beginning, and you gotta, like, level up the character to level 70, and then you get your Paragons like you would naturally. And you have to complete seasonal objectives. Every time you complete a chapter, you get a reward. The Hadred's Gift, which is the starter set, basically begins in Chapter 2. So when you complete your Chapter 2 journey, you get 2 pieces of your Hadred's Gift. When you complete Chapter 3, you get another 2 pieces. When you complete Chapter 4, you get the final 2 pieces. Hadred's Gift, you're always guaranteed the 6 pieces of the set armor. That is the starter set for the season. You're not guaranteed, however, Ancient Legendaries, and you can't get Primal Ancient Legendaries because in order to get Primal Ancient Legendaries in season, you have to complete a Greater Rift 70 difficulty solo, which not a lot of people can do. Speaking of which, this is Greater Rift 70. I'm going to show you that this armor starts to lose out in power, even with certain optimization on it, that it's to a point where this time around you kind of have to rely heavy on your keep away strategies. Like, you got to fire off your Rain of Vengeance and then attack from far with, like, being in Vengeance and just using your entangling shots. You got to strafe to build back up your cooldown, as you see here. Drop in our range of Vengeance, move far away from it. Hopefully the enemies will stay within the cone of the grenades dropping, and that's how you kind of have to take things out. You won't be able to get as aggressive here, and it's kind of like moves away to a non-optimal push type of build variation, you could say. It's just because the armor doesn't have a lot of power to it. Subsequently, obviously, because we're using Squint's Necklace, we take more damage too. As you go higher up in the Grey Rifts, the enemies have more HP, and they can do a lot more damage. So Natalya starts to struggle, because when you miss grenade shots like that, you leave yourself open, and then on top of that, you have to micromanage your Hatred, because when you strafe around in this particular tournament, enemies can take a lot of hits. See, as you see here, I'm keeping away, I'm dropping the grenades in that cone, and I'm trying to lead the enemies, the elite packs, to me. That's pretty much what you're going to have to rely on. This type of keep away, poke and shoot type of strategy to be able to kind of play this armor somewhat effectively in higher Greater Rifts. Now, another thing is about when it comes to Greater Rift 70 and above, don't get rattled if you start taking deaths. This armor really just can't put out that much damage, and while you're playing Keep Away, depending on the dungeon layout, you guys didn't get to see it because I actually did this one off of this particular video. If you run into a bad dungeon layout where the mobs are just dropping a whole bunch of AoE effects on you, and they're just a lot of projectiles coming at you, and you're just not able to kind of keep up with the resources and micromanage between, you know, shifting between Reign of Vengeance and then going Strafe, and then keeping an eye on the Hatred, and then remembering the Entangling Shot, and then rinse, recycle, repeat, you could put yourself in a bad situation. You'll easily get squashed. Because look here, I'm already burning through resources, so now I have to switch back to Entangling Shot to bring back up the Hatred so that I can keep these rotations going. Sometimes the enemies will overwhelm you when you get to these type of high greater rifts, to the point where then it starts to become a little bit frustrating. So don't get frustrated if you start taking death. You still should be able to clear. Ooh, that's a bad shot. That like just sniped me out of nowhere there. Okay. But don't get like flustered or frustrated if you're gonna take a lot more deaths than you normally would with another Demon Hunter armor set with Natalya's Vengeance, because it needs a rework. It kind of needs a rework like in Ina, which got its rework. We will be covering that in the not too distant future, so definitely look forward to that, because that's gonna be a fun video where we get to look at some of the new ways that the armor has changed, and some of the, you know, changes and affixes that they have done to our items to be able to power up the Mystic Allies. Mystic Allies is looking a lot better than it did before, and it plays somewhat different from what it was playing like monk style wise before, so that's gonna be fun. But with Natalya, yeah, it definitely could use a rework, kind of like Firebird, kind of like Ina. Maybe in the future. Obviously, we really don't know what the future holds in store for Diablo 3 past Season 24. Obviously, in September, we are going to get Diablo 2 Resurrected at the middle of September. I think that's also around the time when I think our season journey should be coming to an end for Season 24. So it should be interesting to see what Blizzard does. Will Blizzard support more seasonal journeys for Diablo 3? Will all support shift focus to Diablo 2 Resurrected? Because we're still a little bit unclear exactly what endgame is necessarily going to be for Diablo 2 Resurrected in the coming months. Or not even, well, yeah, for the coming months of Diablo 2. And also what endgame past Diablo 2 release is going to be for Diablo 3. A lot of unanswered questions right now. Like I mentioned before, because it has come up in the comments before, what is my plan when it comes to Diablo 3 content in Diablo 2? Well, I still intend to make Diablo 3 content as long as there's some seasonal journeys. However, I also do want to play Diablo 2. I'm going to try to micromanage between the two in the beginning. And then, depending on what my audience likes, depending on what you guys want to see, depending on what necessarily you're watching in terms of Diablo content, will kind of dictate which game gets more focus on the channel. It might be a time where we do more Diablo 2 than we're doing Diablo 3 on the channel. It might be that maybe Diablo 2 Resurrected, even though it's kind of hard to imagine at this point, is going to be, you know, bad. And then maybe we'll just continue with Diablo 3, which, yeah, not perfect. Has kind of its problems, right? But that's pretty much my game plan. I'll know more in September exactly, when I kind of have a sense of what Blizzard exactly is planning in terms of support for Diablo 3 versus Diablo 2, and just seeing, because there might be a possibility that now with Diablo 3 around the horizon, or Diablo 2 around the horizon, I should say, that players themselves as a community and user base move on from Diablo 3 and just go to Diablo 2. And, you know, if that's the case, then we'll probably get with the times as well. But again, we have to cross the bridge and see exactly what the trends are going to be beforehand. As I always say in this channel, I always thank the Diablo 3 community for making the channel so successful. Always love reading your guys' comments. I love reading your inputs. I love reading your constructive criticism when it's done, obviously, in constructive manner. I like bouncing off ideas between you guys. Sometimes you guys have given very good ideas. I can't thank you guys so much for, you know, all the love, all the support, giving the channel follows, really positive comments, especially as of late. You know, there would not be a channel without you guys, and you guys that have really supported the Diablo content in particular really helped take the channel off. So I'm definitely very grateful to you guys. Obviously, I do more than just Diablo on the channel, because this has always been a gaming variety channel, so I do cover other things as well. And if you haven't checked out some of that stuff, definitely make sure you check it out, because there's a lot more variety still to come as well. But definitely thank you for that. Like I said before, it's the same strategy here. You gotta kind of have to play keep away with them. You can't really go elite pack hunting necessarily with the set, because it's just not fast. You kind of just got to deal with the problems ahead. You know, in terms of how well can this armor do, honestly, I think this probably caps out at like greater 100, 110 with full optimization. This is not going to do greater with 130s. Definitely not going to do greater with 135. Definitely not going to do 150 solo. This is something where maybe 110 if you're lucky. And that's depending on your skill level. That's depending on how well and efficient you play. It could even depend on the type of platform that you're using, even for that matter. So, you know, it's really, really dependent on your playstyle, but I don't think this gets... To the average player, you're not going to do anything past 110 with this. Alright, so we fired off the grenades, and then we just fired back. We were able to take it out with one hit. You can do things like this with Rift Guardians, but the problem is leading up to the Rift Guardian, everything else just kind of feels quite a bit more tanky. Again, don't feel weird or sad if you get squashed. As you can see, I have a lot of attack invested in here, but it's still not enough to really be able to do a significant net. I'm kind of having to push at greater Rift 70s, which, keep in mind, this is not like greater Rift 75, so we're not even at Tournament 16. We struggle at Tournament 15. I'm not going to show you Tournament 16 because it's going to be a lot longer playstyle and basically the same thing as before. Oops. I don't know why I touched that pylon. I forgot that I have Nemesis Bracers as a brain farm my end. Don't do that. That's a thing not to do. Keep that in mind. Alright, but let's level up the jump. But like I said, you know, this is one of those armors I wouldn't recommend just like trying to push it really any further. You know, you do this. You get this as your star set. You work with it. You work with it until you get Gears of Dreadland or Unhallowed Essence, and you use those armors in place of this one, or even to a lesser extent Marauding or the Shadow. All four of those armors will do better for you long term than this particular armor. As you saw, that was greater of 70, 7-minute clear time. That's not good, and that's with some optimization on here. It's just not a good armor to use. I don't recommend it. Use it to get what you need to then get better stats. Or not even better stats, to just do better in terms of your Season 24 journey. Because if you try to rock this the whole Season 24 journey, you're not going to finish Chapter 13 or Chapter 12 for that matter. Not in Natalya's. Like, you got to be like a god at Diablo. And this is just a very weak armor. And there's not a lot of pieces of things you can use in conjunction with this to kind of increase the attack stats. You know, last season, obviously you had the extra slot Incanized Cube, so you could play a little bit more around with the Green Fan and Odyssey's End. You don't got that type of leeway, and if you put the Fan in here instead of Entangling Shot, the Fan just doesn't do as much for you. You won't get as much out of it. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword as to what you should do and what you shouldn't do with it. It's just, you're going to be stressed out, is basically what I'm getting at. It's not worth it. You're going to waste so much time investing resources into something that's not going to be able to perform well. And I just actually got some pretty decent loot. I actually needed Antique Visage boots that were Ancient Legendary. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. As always, a like is greatly appreciated in this video. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, consider doing so as it helps the channel grow. And I will see you for the next Diablo 3 video. Till next time.